Welcome to Aspire, and I Have the Right to podcast, where we amplify voices, share stories, and drive change in the fight against sexual assault. We explore the critical issues surrounding student safety, institutional accountability, and survivor empowerment. In every episode, our goal is to provide insightful conversations with survivors, experts, educators, and advocates, giving you, our listener, valuable information, resources, and actionable steps to create safer environments and cultivate a culture of respect and consent. Before we begin today's episode, we want to give a content warning. This conversation may include discussion of childhood sexual abuse, adult sexual abuse, addiction, suicidal thoughts, and recovery. These topics may be difficult or activating for some listeners. Please take care of yourself while listening. Step away if you need to, and know that support is available. You can visit ihavetheright2.org/resources for a list of support services and hotlines.
So today's guest is someone who is not only a passionate advocate and gifted educator, but also a dear friend of mine. I first met Karen Udall when she reached out to I Have the Right To as a mom looking to connect with another parent who had been through something no family ever should. Her daughter had been sexually assaulted. What started as a heartfelt conversation between two moms turned into a powerful partnership and friendship.
Karen is now the program director and a facilitator with I Have the Right To. She holds a master's degree in forensic psychology, is a certified school counselor, and a consent educator. She has been instrumental in helping our organization reach over 30,000 students, educators, and parents across the country with our Healthy Relationships and Empathetic Leadership curriculum.
Karen's personal journey is what brought her to this work, but it's her heart, determination, and vision that makes her such a powerful force in the fight to prevent sexual violence and to support survivors. We are so grateful to have her here today to share her story. Karen, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you take us back to that moment when you first reached out to I Have the Right To and we met? What were you looking for, and what did that connection mean to you at the time?
Well, I'm going to go back a little bit before reaching out to I Have the Right To. I am the mom of three children. My youngest was sexually assaulted, and we didn't know that she had been sexually assaulted. She hadn't been aware of what had happened. She didn't have the words to describe what took place. And it was several months before there were some trauma signs that let us know what had transpired. And I'd been the mom that had lots of rules in place and had lots of conversation with my kids. And we talked very openly about relationships. But I didn't have the words either. There was just a complete lack of knowledge about consent and about unhealthy teen relationships in general. And so once we were deep in trying to figure out what had happened and what trauma had done to her, what trauma had done to all of us, and we were trying to navigate that, one of her friends gave me Chesty Prout's book and also called I Have the Right To. And I read it and I'm going to back up one more second and let you know that I have since heard so many survivors connect to that book as survivors connecting with Chessie. But for me, reading the book meant there was another mom out there experiencing this. And the conclusion of that book had me reaching out instantly. There was a website, an email address in the back of the book. And I reached out because I thought, oh my gosh, someone else gets it. Someone else knows what this is like. And that connection then just gave me a sense of comfort. And I just want to add that I did have amazing friends that were supportive, but they didn't know how to navigate it either. And so while I appreciated that lift from my friends, from my family, knowing that truly there was another mom experiencing it oddly provided a sense of comfort.
So I'm sure that that provided so much of a comfort. And I have been able to have a first row witness of your relationship between the two of you and how you both support each other. And it's been such a wonderful experience getting to work with the both of you. Karen, can you talk a little bit about what it was like navigating your daughter's experience and this? You talked about some of the support systems you had within like your own family and friend group, but the other support systems that maybe should have been there that weren't, and what it was like navigating through that, and then what led you to making the decision to go back to school afterwards in that journey. If you could share a little bit about that with our listeners.
Oh, yes. So, navigating the experience without the support system, I did mention, right, having friends in place. I had emotional support from my friends. And to be perfectly honest, my husband and I were not at the same place at the same time in the journey. So while we were supportive of one another, emotionally, that was challenging to try to figure out where are we and how do we navigate this. My In our marriage, I was the one that got really angry at the boy, at the situation, at the school, and my husband is this incredibly loyal, compassionate, empathetic human. Um, and so I was even frustrated at that. Like, why aren't you angry with me? Why aren't you just infuriated? I didn't know how to deal with that. So I did have the support system emotionally on many levels. What we didn't have was support from the school. I had gone to the school district. The perpetrator was my daughter's boyfriend at the time, and they went to school together. And once we knew what happened, I went to the school and I shared with them that this had transpired and that we needed to keep them separate. And while they did attempt at the beginning to put some parameters in place, for example, they made sure that their schedules were in different hallways that they would not cross when they were going to class. Um, they they're teenagers, and he easily found his way to finding her on campus. And when I approached the school, they said, "Well, it's a big campus. There's not really anything we can do beyond putting this in place." Um, and then a year into the journey, he started to stalk her, and we approached the school again. And I even went so far as to speak with the superintendent of schools. And his response was, "Well, if there's no court order, then we can't do anything to help you." And so my daughter made the choice to go to court and get a restraining order to protect herself. I was so proud of her. And at that point, the school stopped communicating with us. The minute that we had the court order, they did nothing to help and they cut ties, and they shared with some of her teachers that were supportive that they should not be talking with us. And it really left us without a place to turn. Um, and so that is the largest support system that should have been in place that just wasn't. So I ended up, as we got through the trauma and we got through um, the depths of how to regulate emotionally, all of us, I decided to go back to school because I knew, having met Susan and now what I've gone through and reading other books and other experiences, I knew that there were so many people that needed these resources. And I didn't want any other student or parent to go through this again. And so I went back to school and I finished my degree that I had started many years earlier. I finished a degree in psychology and sociology, and I double majored. And then I went on immediately and got my master's degree in forensic psychology, focused on victimology, thinking I could be a victim's advocate. I can help people through. And it was pretty quick that I determined prevention is the way to go: prevention, awareness, and education. Victims advocates are amazing, and I'm so grateful. We had a wonderful one that helped us through when we were going to the court system. But for me, the focus was on how do whole communities come together and prevent this from happening ever again. And so I've been able to spend the last 2.5 years working with I Have the Right to and meeting students where they are, all the way through from middle school to high school, college, university students, faculty, parents. It's been an amazing journey.
You and I often go into schools and we often talk about institutional courage versus institutional betrayal. And your own story and your daughter's journey with it reminded me of that, like the difference between institutional courage and institutional betrayal. And I remember a lot of my clients that dealt with sexual assault that was occurring, either occurred at school or occurred with a peer that they went to school with. Often the institution's response was the most, what they would say themselves would say was the most traumatic because the institution was supposed to be there for them, had made promises to be there for them and weren't. And many of those clients also went on to have to go, made the hard decision to go to a different school, to finish their education at a different school, not because that's what they wanted, but really because of safety. That was the only option that they had because the institution wasn't protecting them. So I'd love to just hear, your thoughts on that and if they've changed over the years and just, sort of the trauma that comes from institutional betrayal versus, the actual actions by the perpetrator.
I was going to, bring up that same subject, actually, Katie and Karen as well. There's so much to unpack with what you just said. You and I have talked often about how we had different experiences in our emotional reaction. And my husband was the angry one. Alex was really angry. And I was the one who wanted to know why. Why did this young man do it? But we both shared this blasé attitude from the schools where no survivor, no family wants to run to the court system. The court system is so not geared towards supporting survivors of sexual assault. It's set up for a very different type of operation, and it is really traumatizing. I'm sure it was so hard for your daughter to go get that restraining order in high school. In high school, talk about the social implications of that too. So traumatizing. And Chessie changed schools, right? In the end. But all you want is understanding from your community. And obviously, that's what we bonded over. We're trying to build that understanding in schools. It's just such a beautiful thing as your friend and as your colleague to witness the joy that you take, that we all take when we go to schools and try to share, this doesn't have to happen to you in this manner. We can't protect you from sexual assault, beyond the pale, right? It's going to happen, unfortunately, as long as there are perpetrators, but we can kind of light the way for you and schools as well. And that is the great joy I think we all find in telling students about their rights.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I had an interesting reaction recently. I drove by the school. So my daughter did end up changing schools for her senior year.
Mm.
And after a very long journey of trying to stay with her friends that she had been with since kindergarten, um, and in an environment where she had been thriving. She was on student council. She had some fantastic friend groups. She had wonderful opportunities. Um, and she did end up changing. The school absolutely handled it wrong. The one thing, even today, it's been 8 years. And the one thing my husband will say today is, we should have addressed the school more. We should have handled it with the school more, like gone to them to really have them be courageous instead of betraying us. Um, but the thing that happened recently, uh, I was driving at the time that school let out. And I
Mm.
rarely drive by her school. It's just south of my house. It's not that far, but I don't have a reason to drive past it typically. I can get different routes, and I don't think it's intentional that I don't drive by it. I just don't. But this particular day last week, I did, and school was getting out, and all the cars were lined up to pick up their kids. And where I typically stopped to park to pick her up, there were lines of cars. And it was so fascinating that I became so aware of this visceral reaction that I had for the first time in 8 years, that these parents are picking up their kids from that school. It was so fascinating to me to think I've healed. I've done my own therapy as a secondary survivor. And still, that reaction came up for me to know, is there something happening in there? Has the school changed? Are they aware of these kids that are maybe still experiencing this and statistically probably are still experiencing this on their campus? And it was just it was kind of an eye-opening moment for me to be able to just sit emotionally and think, wow, some of these things still hit so hard. And opportunity that these schools have to do it right, I'm grateful that we have that chance to talk to them about it. We do educate the faculty, we talk with them, but it is when things go wrong that it's so important to not just have window dressing, not just say, oh, we've hired a firm to help us, but
Hmm.
apologize. The one thing that we as an organization have heard from every survivor is, I just wanted the school to apologize. And I think it's important that we share that with schools today, that they know that they can have such an impact in turning it around.
So many of my clients, I think, would not have pursued litigation if the school would have just said sorry and put in place measures to protect future students.
Sure.
I know that this work has actually given me a lot of hope because in my prior role, I used to always see people getting it wrong. And
Mm.
it's really nice to work with schools who are making the effort to get it right. And not that there won't be mistakes, not that, no person or institution is perfect, but to see institutions that are really trying, like you said, to be courageous has given me a new hope. And so I was just wondering how that's influenced you. Like, do you feel like you have more hope now that you're working with schools?
I do. I feel like I have more hope in the schools. I mean, we've been in schools in 12 or 13 states across the US, and um, they're embracing this work. But more importantly, I see the students embracing it. Um, when I first started this work, specifically with I Have the Right To, and I would see 15-year-old boys in the audience, I used to think, oh man, these 15-year-old, I'm going to teach them something. And they have taught me so much more than I think I can teach them, because these students today, boys and girls, want to know this information. They want to do the work. They want to understand each other. They want to be good upstanders. They want to speak up. They want to be vulnerable. I mean, I just am so impressed with the students and the families that we meet, and how all of the communities are that we serve are trying to come together as an ecosystem and create that environment for everyone in the community. It absolutely gives me hope.
100%. 100%. It's really an interactive journey that the organization does with these schools. I mean, we learn from the students learn from us, they learn from the stories that we share. Um, and so, how has your own journey with how you've worked with students and families evolved? And where you are in your own healing journey now. I mean, I'm continuing on my healing journey. I know every month I can kind of feel, this feels a little bit better, or I need to go back and work on this, concept a little bit more. Um, Good days, hard days, right? So
Absolutely.
just curious how your journey is shaping up in your, showing up in your work, I guess. Because you're flying all over the country, dealing with all different types of student populations. And I'd like to know as your friend too and colleague.
Yeah, I am. I had a lot of therapy for myself to try to figure out where I was. I didn't realize that I had my own post traumatic stress. But the journey in healing with my daughter has made such a difference in what I do because she and I have been able to have really open conversations about the work that I do now, and how if I had known this information back then, what difference might it have made, not just for her, but really for her friends. We were the hangout house, and all of her friend group was at my house. And I spoke openly with all of her friends. And fortunately, she had other friends' parents that were also very open. So I feel like it was a really great community. Um, and so it I think that the difference in how I would have approached things then has impacted how I do approach it now. Because I have the knowledge, because I understand consent, I understand healthy relationships, I understand what it means to be an upstander, what kids can do if they see something going off the rails. They see even yellow flags versus red flags in their friendships. Um, it just gives me the opportunity to speak up more freely. And um, yeah, I travel all over the US and talk with students. And I love that we tailor our work to each school because I can learn about the communities in which we're going. And that helps shape, okay, what can these conversations entail? What did these kids face in their community? Or what kind of challenges are they having? Or what are they embracing? And how can we bring that into the work? But having the knowledge, I share that with parents every time I speak with them, is just knowing the signs of, hey, something is off with my kid and I'm not sure what it is. Having that little piece is so helpful. And I've had parents share that back if I had known then what I know now. And so it's giving me an opportunity to say, okay, now you can know now, right? These tools are here for you to know.
I am lucky enough to have worked with you on those workshops and seeing you present to educators and parents. For the people who are listening, what are those flags, red flag moments that you share with, with the different groups that you've presented to?
So for parents, I think there are some really big ones, like if your child is super extroverted and now they're introverted or they're isolating, or maybe your child is typically very easygoing and all of a sudden they're incredibly stressed. It doesn't mean that trauma has occurred. It means something's off and we want to watch for that. Are their grades changing? Right? Are they usually an A student and now they are failing a class? And maybe what's happening in the one class they're failing is just a disagreement with a teacher and it's not going well. Maybe it's something they don't understand, or maybe there's some trauma that's happening. Um, so those are some of the red flags: isolating, avoidance, overly jealous, overly emotional when they didn't used to be, just looking for those little signs that change. But I learned something interesting actually yesterday from one of our other podcast guests. I had a conversation with Stacey Hedis, who has been on our podcast. She is a neurobiologist. She teaches at a college in South Carolina. And she shared with me, when we see these red flags, oftentimes those red flags are when it's big and we're not looking at the yellow flags first. And I thought, oh, that's a big light bulb for me to be able to share now forward, right? Once someone is isolating, once they're failing a class, we've missed some signs before that. And we need to really kind of hone in on what are some little things that are taking place. And that isn't necessarily applicable to trauma or sexual assault in all survivors. But in our situation, mine personally, and what I see so often is that because we know perpetration happens most of the time by someone you know and someone that you have a relationship with, it's watching for those yellow and red flags in those relationships before it gets to isolation, jealousy, grades dropping, anger. We should be watching at agitation, not anger. The grades are C's, not A's, not a failing, right? Just kind of looking in advance of what's going on.
So, Karen, you've been in front of, hundreds, thousands of students in the course of time working with us. There've been some amazingly special moments, powerful moments that have happened with our students. Can you share with us any of those moments that stick out? Why you're impressed with the kids we meet with and why you're hopeful?
Yeah. There are 2 in particular, that stand out to me, and both happen to be 15-year-old boys who spoke to me afterwards. One of the workshops was about trauma and the brain, and I had about 12 kids in the classroom, so it was a much more intimate setting where we could have true conversations. And I had shared how I got into this work. Typically, I don't share my whole story as the mom. I usually give kind of just an overview of what brought me to this work. And I had shared that overview with these students. And one of the students came up afterwards and said, "Can you go back for just a minute to the story of how you got involved? And can you just tell me, did that kid ever apologize to you?" And for me, I thought, oh, I have so much hope in the future. These kids are the ones that are going to change the world. And for that young man to have such empathy, he learned all about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex and all the science about the brain and what happened. And the thing that resonated with him most after an hour was not the science, but wow, did somebody apologize? The empathy that came from him was huge for me. It was
Mm.
just it was pure joy to know that this is what's coming up. The other situation was a young man who came up after a class. We had talked about the characteristics of a healthy relationship, an unhealthy relationship, an abusive relationship, and how do we go, especially with teenagers, they weave in between healthy and unhealthy because they're just learning how to navigate relationships. um, and this young man came up afterwards and said, "Hey, can you throw that blue slide with the list of things back up?" And I put it back up and he said, "Yeah, that one. Can I take a screenshot of that? I think I'm doing some of those unhealthy things with my girlfriend and I need to talk to her and fix that." And again, just
Oh,
whew, just this incredible, overwhelming feeling to me of these kids have the future. They've got it and they get it, but they've got us as
mm.
aging adults, and I am a grandmother. I am an aging adult. But they get it and the world is going to be a better place because of them.
Those are beautiful stories. Thank you for sharing those. Beautiful.
Susan, I would love to hear from you, like the same question. What are like a couple moments that you stand out to you? Because I know we all have them in our heads of here are the different ones and just you've
Oh
been
my
doing this for so
goodness.
long. Are there any like recent ones or ones
Yes.
over the years? Yeah.
There are. Recently, our intern, Emma B. from a New York school, just did an amazing post for us on how she has grown in learning to claim her voice and her power. And that made me cry when I heard that because that's why we founded this organization, so that young people will feel like they're supported enough to claim their voice and power, not only just about sexual assault, but about all their values and principles that they feel are worth speaking up about and claiming and staking their rights. And so then there was another intern, Lulu, recently, who just did the most beautiful blog for us that actually I wanted to send to some older relatives of mine because we always tease them for saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And Lulu talked about why saying fine is actually can be self-harming when you don't feel like you have the power to speak to how things are. But then there was another group too, a little while back. And Karen, we were together, Katie, we were all together with this group of at a girls' school when the girls said all those red flags about relationships applied to their friendships as well. And I thought, yes, this is getting through because, you're supposed to be able to make mistakes in high school and junior high, or as we used to say, learning opportunities, right? And so that's what it's all about, getting conversation in community about the way you want to be in the world. And boy, oh boy, you can get great scores on your tests and get into great colleges. But if we don't address this in our culture, we're going to have a lot more issues to deal with when these kids get older, like we're seeing
Mhm.
already.
And one of the lines that our statement, I shouldn't say it's a line because then it sounds like it's a tagline, but we say safety starts with respect. And that's in everything that we present to schools, everything that we do, everything we talk about, not just in our programming, but as an organization. And our interns, um, they're remarkable when you talk about what they've done this summer with us and um, and showing that respect to themselves with the I'm fine and
Mhm.
showing respect for others and then taking that out. It's just it it truly is a powerful statement. It does safety does start with respect and it does reflect inward and outward.
I'm constantly just in awe of the two of you because you took something that is truly one of the most horrific things that can happen to a mom, right? Like, I have little ones, and the thought of somebody hurting my kids just immediately makes me feel like I wanna cry and vomit at the same time because it's like no one I just wanna keep them in a bubble, but I know I can't, and the both of you took these horrible things and had the courage to make it into something so beautiful, and you meet with young people every day, and you've built these communities around yourself, which is magnificent. They're magnificent, these communities of support that the two of you have had around each other, and it's reminded me how much community is important, how much, friendship is important. I truly admire you both as, women, as moms, as wives, as friends, and just it's that reminder of be intentional about the community that you're creating, the people that you're allowing in your space, even beyond high school. And I would love to hear if you have any advice for whether it's young people, whether it's, new parents, whether it's people like further along in life, like how did you build something so powerful out of something so awful? And then how have you created these communities of support around yourself? Like any advice on that? I know that's like such a big question, but it's so important.
I I will jump in. Um, my mom was really a big proponent of 12-step programs, right? And I remember one of the sayings she came home with was, this is way back in the day. It changes now, but she'd say, you can't get eggs when you go to the gas station. And that means that, not everyone is capable of giving you the support you need. And it was even as recently as last week, I was in tears over an extended person in my world's lack of support and lack of outreach to me. And and right after that happened, two other people surprised me with these beautiful notes. And one was our great supporter, Susie. And Susie's, who's a beautiful writer and survivor and thriver, sent me this beautiful note she'd written in a Substack post, and I hope we get to share it at some point. And I'm like, it's okay. This person can't support me, but this person really gets what I'm all about. And um, And that's okay. We have to just accept that's where people are in their journey. So we have traded in lots of different community members for new ones. And that's probably been the greatest gift of this journey. Yeah, you'll still shed tears. It will be sad when you realize what you hope for out of one friendship isn't there. But I truly believe in a higher power, and I believe that there's a beauty to the communities you're open to finding. They're there if you don't give up and you keep reaching and looking for them.
There's a really great poem. I don't know who wrote it, but it's called Reason, Season, Lifetime. And it talks
Uh,
about friendships. And it says, right, sometimes people come into your life for a specific reason and they're there just for that moment. And it's okay when that reason ends for them to leave. And others are there for a season, so a longer period of time. And same thing, it's it serves its purpose. That friendship for each other or that relationship with each other serves its purpose for that season, and some are lifetime. And for me personally, um, I've had friendships in all of those areas. And I think part of what we build in life is accepting that it's okay that some things in our lives are there, whether it's relationships or school or a specific job. It's okay that it's there for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And building that trust in there are those times that it's okay to let it go. And there are
mhm.
times that it's important to fight for what's right. And it's important to step up and say, okay, this is getting more difficult, but I want to see it through because it should be a lifetime thing. Or it's okay to say, I'm going to fight a little bit and then I'm going to set a boundary and let this one go.
It goes back so much to what we talk about with kids. And I that's what I always am telling people. I'm like, yes, we're talking to kids about healthy relationships and consent, but it's so much more than that. And there's so many adults that would be just so much better off if they had this training when they were younger, or even if they have this training now, because it goes back to like, but you both said it, like, are these friendships healthy or unhealthy? Like knowing your own boundaries, like, is this serving me? How does it make me feel? Like checking in with myself and like, you know, verbalizing that with those people and then making the decisions of, what needs it doesn't just because it has been doesn't mean it has to always be. Like you can adjust and continue adjusting throughout your life and finding the people that give you like who fill your cup.
Yeah, and let me just add too, it's I think it's important to remember that it's okay to sit in the uncomfortable, and we do share this when we talk to students and with faculty, but it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's not okay to be unsafe. So when we evaluate these things in our life, is it okay to just kind of say, "Oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm going to push through this," or "I'm unsafe. I need a walk," and
Mhm.
and evaluate that and sit with it and be okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And how it's not just, I mean, we're giving the kids that we meet with, the students that we meet with, the hope is that they use these skills in high school and college, but way beyond that as well. Um, One thing I also wanted to ask is, okay, you both have been through that horrific moment that your child tells you something happened to them. What would you tell to parents or educators? A kid comes to them, whether it's their child or another child, and they say, this happened. What are, if you have like 3 tips in the aftermath of somebody disclosing to you, what are like the 3 things you should make sure that you do as a parent or as a trusted adult in that person's life?
Oh gosh. I'm going to take this really quickly and just say, I don't know if I have three, but I have two.
Yeah.
And that is thank you for trusting me and telling me, and I love you. It's not about the questions, it's not about the details. I got hung up on that as the mom, thinking I need to know all of the things, and I didn't. I just needed to say, I love you. I'm so sorry that happened. There's your third. I'm sorry that happened. I love you. I believe you, and I'm so grateful that you trusted me.
It's beautiful, Karen. Yep. I think, I would say in my experience, my child was looking for a lighthouse, and I said things you said as well, and I just wanted to make sure that she was safe. She told me over the phone, and so I took steps to make sure that she was safe and going to be looked after, and, um, and I just assured her it was going to be okay, that, it was important she used her voice and that I had her back, and it was gonna be okay, and I would, be there soon with her to help her through it. Um, so, yeah, I think the number one thing is I believe you and I love you, just like you
Yeah, and let
said.
me clarify, I didn't say that. I absolutely didn't say it. My first question before we even knew that it had been assault was, "Did you tell him no?" And
Mhm,
that was so re-victimizing, and I didn't know that at the time. She couldn't have defined that at the time. I don't even know that anyone that I've told the story to without the knowledge that we have would know that that hurts someone. But instead of just, I love you, I said the wrong thing. And so to turn, and I don't say that to beat myself up over it. I say that because it's absolutely a learning moment that we have the opportunity to pass on to others so that they do say what you did, Susan. I love you. Are you safe? I'm here for you. Um, when somebody gets in a car accident, I'm stealing this from one of our other podcast guests, who is Jess Michaels, but she said, when someone gets in a car accident, the first thing someone says to them is, "Are you okay?" But when
mhm,
someone discloses sexual assault or rape, the first thing we say is, "Do you want to go to the police? You should report it. What happened? What were you wearing? Were you drinking?" All of those things are the wrong things in that moment. And it's more injurious oftentimes than a car accident, specifically a fender bender. But still, even with a fender bender, the first thing is, "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" And that's exactly what we should be saying to survivors. "Are you okay? Thanks for
It
telling me."
it takes so much courage to tell somebody, and if you're met with, like, interrogation or whatever it is, whatever, um, the response is, it really can make you close back up, and so that response is so important, and you guys both have shared with hundreds, thousands of people, about how to respond, and that ripple effect of, now it's going even wider and people have this information, and that's really the hope and the goal. Susan, you said something about a lighthouse, and I don't think I've ever told you this, but I don't know if you or Alex said it to Andrew, my husband, in person, or if it was in a podcast episode that he listened to. But you said you need to be the lighthouse for your kid. You don't need to get in the boat with them, or something along those lines.
well,
And
that's
he
it.
said to me, Susan and Alex are always in my head going, you don't need to get in the boat with them, just be the lighthouse. And I just feel like that is such a great piece of advice, and like it gives you like the visual, right, of where your kid needs you to be.
Mhm. Well, I will give credit to my wonderful counselor who told me that, and I use that all the time in my own life, so, yep, right there with you. We all need those reminders.
That's why this education is so important, because
Mhm.
without the education, you don't know how to be the lighthouse, right?
Well,
Like you don't it happens and you can't help but get in the boat because you don't know what to do. Whereas if you have this education, whether you're a peer or a community member, a friend or a parent or an educator, now you have all the information ahead of time so you can be the
mhm,
lighthouse. You
right.
know not to get in the boat. Sort of how to guide them and where to shine the light. So, yeah.
I had an amazing conversation with our board member, Steve Peacock, today, who is really involved in the corporate space and advocating for mental health. He speaks to our students about his own mental health journey, about his sexual assault. And I reminded him we all react to trauma, like your daughter disclosing to you, Karen, my child disclosing to me, the many survivors we talk to when we go to schools and they disclose to us. But more back on the family base, we all have our own generational trauma. And, some of us are aware of some of it, or some of us don't have any idea of what's kind of transpired. I know each of us personally have had trauma in our lives prior to our children's sexual violence. And so we have to cut ourselves a little break because unless you do the work, there's some wiring there on how you're going to respond. Oh no, did you do the right thing? Did you say no? Because that's what you focused on in this life. I'm going to do the right thing, right thing. Well, there's no right thing that protects you from a perpetrator. A perpetrator is going to perpetrate when they're going to perpetrate. So there's nothing a survivor can do to, you know, foolproof against a perpetrator. But I think we have to acknowledge that for all the listeners, that is something we all need to really delve into our own feelings, our own histories, and our own hangups, really, about the issues that are involved in sexual assault because it's complex and we deserve that, and our children deserve that. So every generation we improve a little bit is what I was kind of telling Steve, or the hope is we improve a little bit. And our kids' generations, hopefully, and the kids we meet with.
And Steve is such a important example of that because also the way that younger generations can heal older generations. Like I've had so many older survivors, some of which were my clients, Steve, who's our board member, who have said the courage of young people to speak up and the courage of young people to address these issues have actually given them the strength. People who are much older than the students that we're working with, now they have the strength to speak about what they went through, or they have the strength to go to therapy, or they have the strength to, speak publicly about it, or even just speak to the people in their lives about it and the healing that it's allowed. And that's the power of it, right? And that's what I
Absolutely
always try to tell our
beautiful.
students. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you might influence your peers, but you might influence your parents, your grandparents, their friends. Like the
Mhm.
ripples go in all directions.
Such a great point, Katie.
Yeah. I think it's super interesting to also note that throughout this conversation, we have each credited someone else with teaching us something as well. And that embracing those things, knowing that I can learn from everyone with whom I come in contact, whether it is a 15-year-old boy or a 70-year-old man or a 20-year-old girl. Everyone we come in contact with has something to share and a valuable experience from their life. And we just have the opportunity as humans to just build on that and accept whatever gifts come our way.
100%.
So, Karen, I feel like the three of us could just talk for hours and hours, which we often do. But since we have to record this in one episode, what we've been trying to end each episode with is an I have the right to statement, which I know you are very familiar with. So, how would you complete the phrase, I have the right to, and what does it mean to you?
I have actually thought about this because, well, I'm part of the organization, but also because I have listened to every episode that we have. And I have thought, what would I say? And there are so many. On the back of Chelsea's book, there's a list of, I think it's 9 I have the right tos. For me today, I have the right to use my voice for good, for education, for awareness, and I have the right to receive what comes back to me.
I love it.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for sharing your story, your wisdom, and your heart with us today. Your journey from being a mom searching for support to becoming a leader and educator in this movement is nothing short of inspiring.
It has been such an honor to walk beside you, Karen, in this work. And I know your story will resonate with so many parents, educators, and survivors who are looking for hope and a way forward. You are living proof that healing is possible and that we can turn pain into powerful change.
Thank you. Can I just add that I believe our daughters are also living proof that healing is possible. I and so impressed with my own daughter
Mhm.
every single day for the journey that she took to heal and for the joy that I find in our relationship now that she's a young adult. Healing is possible for her as an individual, for me, and then for us together.
Thank you, Karen, for sharing that. That's beautiful. I love hearing that.
And the courage of all of you,
Mm.
daughters and mothers, are give courage to so many others, including myself.
Mm.
To our listeners, if today's conversation moved you, please share this episode with someone who needs it. And remember, education is prevention. When we talk to young people openly and honestly, we're helping to build a safer, more compassionate world. We're so grateful you joined us. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and never forget, you have the right to be heard, believed, and supported. Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends about Aspire, the I Have the Right To podcast. Visit IHaveTheRightTo.org to learn more about our programming for students, educators, and parents, as well as internship opportunities. And don't forget to follow us on social media at I Have the Right To. Until next time, stay empowered and keep the conversations going.